Greetings, campers. It's coffee break time. I'll wait until some folks arrive. In the meantime, time to open up and see what's going on in the sky and over the next 2 weeks. So I might as well put it in dynamic mode, the chart that is. 3 p.m. I'm ready. Is everybody else ready? Somebody there? Please acknowledge your presence if you have entered the room. Coffee break live update. And it's real coffee. No fake stuff. Good afternoon, one and all. It's Coffee Break Live Update for the week of June 1st through June 7th. We have a full slate of things today. The Thursday episode 10, will not take place till Friday. So that's the 5th, just in case you want to stop by. Loads to talk about today. What I have in the title of this is What's That Pea Doing Inside Your Brain? I'm not calling you pea brains. By no means. What I'm referring to is the pineal gland, otherwise known as your third eye. There was a request last week by a fellow traveler, Alan Dolan, who is the breath guru. He requested some information regarding the pineal gland and calcification of the pineal gland. So I'm very happy to say that I've done a little research, done a little digging, and found out some of the problems that cause the calcification of the pineal gland. Now, why is this important? Well, a number of reasons. The pineal gland itself is made up of optic cells. All right, I'm not sure if you're aware of that. Optic meaning they are light sensitive. The cells in the pineal gland are light sensitive. Now, this makes sense, especially when we begin to think about things like the sun as a source of not just light, i.e. photons, but also as a source of information. Okay? Hi, Debbie. Thanks for joining. People are slowly waking up. Maybe it was a rough night and everybody was still up late checking out the news or something, what's going on in the U.S. It's coffee break time. So, hey, kick back. Have a cuppa. So, in this thing about pineal gland and about the third eye, I'm sure most of you have understood or what the function of the third eye is. It's higher vision, higher knowing, clairvoyant vision, clairaudience, precognition, and so forth. It's really tied to the right brain, more receptive to other higher dimensions, higher information. So with this thing of optic cells residing within the makeup of the pineal gland, it is light sensitive. So when we look at the sun, for example, we are not just taking in light through our optic nerves or through our skin. We are taking in light through this guy right here, known in the Hindu or Vedic traditions as the third eye, the all-knowing eye, all-seeing eye. This is the understanding point at a nonverbal level, what's going on with information that we receive at nonverbal levels. So, to me, and from my understanding, is the sun is not just a giver of warmth, it's not just a giver of photonic light between certain range of the electromagnetic spectrum, it's giving information and intelligence, higher intelligence. And we're absorbing that right through into the third eye when we are looking at the sun or laying in the sun. And this is also one of the centers that gets heavily activated if you are too mental, if you're too much in like higher mental mode, logic mode. You're constantly thinking about things, working on things in your head, working out stuff, analyzing, worrying, getting how should we say, too caught up in the process of cogitation or logic. Welcome everybody. Hi Tanya, hi Winfield. I missed a couple of other names. I like Being Tiffany. I love the name of that. I love your name. Lou, Larissa, my nephew Mark. Oh boy, I've got a nice group today. Really nice. And Tana, thank you. So we're talking about the pineal gland, in case you're late joining. Pineal gland, otherwise known as the pea in the brain, or not pea-brained. It's pea-sized, all right? And the problem with, one of the problems of our modern culture, our modern diet, et cetera, is that it has created calcification within the pineal gland. The mystic Rudolf Steiner, if you've ever heard of what Waldorf schools are, you'll know who, you'll know who the originator of the Waldorf schools was Rudolf Steiner. He's an Austrian mystic. And he talked first, because of the modern era he was in, late 1800s, early 1900s, 20th century, about the problems with what was affecting or toxifying the pineal gland, and why most people didn't have access to seeing nature as, full of luminosity, seeing other people as full of light, seeing animals and crystals and so forth in their multi-dimensional state. So, he says they're shut down to that. It just looks like inert matter to them, or it looks like biological matter, and that's it. There's no real life force energy. There is no luminescence or numinescence. So our pineal gland takes up the slack where we end in our capacity to process light through the optic nerve. Excuse me. Coffee went down the wrong pipe. Hi, David. So he said that it is very important that we do not lose connection to our soul, lose a connection to the higher dimensions and the higher knowing. And one of the ways, in matter of fact, that he thought people should stay away from in order, they didn't want to be shut off from a connection to their soul and to higher spiritual realities, is to not get vaccinated. He was, I think, in the 20th century, the first anti-vaxxer around, and he was not ashamed to talk about it. And of course, he lived through the era of the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918 and 19. So let's go back to what can cause calcification in the pineal gland. Pesticides and herbicides. Calcium, excessive calcium, like from drinking dairy products, eating dairy products. Pesticides and herbicides can be found in almost all commercially produced or grown food and in animals. Mercury, found predominantly these days in seafood, and especially shellfish. Higher concentrations of it in shellfish. It's also being, showing up in weird places like drinking water and other environmental places that are problems. Here's another one. I'd never heard of this. Halides. This is a class of minerals that encompasses chlorine, bromide, and of course fluoride. Well, guess where you find, I'd never heard that name before, chlorine and fluoride. It's in drinking water. It's in municipal tap water. Other toxins that affect or create calcification in the pineal are sugar, artificial sweeteners, air fresheners, deodorants, and anything that isn't of a natural or organic origin. So there you have sort of the causes, if you will. Now I'll post the links to these 3 articles that I found in the comments section at the end. All right. Now, why am I bringing up the pineal gland? Well, it wasn't just because of a request from Alan Dolan, the breath guru. It's also important for us to be able to see clearly and not get overwhelmed by the sheer amount, the avalanche of information and data that we are encountering at any moment of our waking lives. Well, you know what? It continues to happen even when we're asleep. All right. TV, radio waves, microwave transmissions, they're all bombarding us, going through our body, through the walls of our house all night long, right? It's especially happening if you have left your Wi-Fi on in your router, or if you have your data running, through the walls, electrical systems in your house to be able to have broadband connections in other parts of the home. Turn that stuff off at night, okay? Turn that stuff off. The pineal is also important from another aspect. It's like that's one of the places besides the hypothalamus where you actually have naturally occurring DMT. This is called, the God hormone. This is what gets activated by psychotropic plants like ayahuasca, San Pedro, psilocybin mushrooms, and so forth, and LSD, which is, I know, synthetic, but it is that bridge into the inner psychedelic realm. And the psychedelic realm, the hallucinations that we see aren't really hallucinations. The dimensions we access aren't just hallucinations. They are other levels of life itself, or realities, other realities. So this is why most of these things are illegal, right? They don't want us to be accessing other realities. So stick with me here, okay? This is important stuff. So you're wondering, okay, well, how do I know if my pineal gland is calcified? You kind of know, or you can, sometimes know by merely taking action about cleaning it and clearing it, and then see how you feel. So in the traditions, the spiritual or Ayurvedic traditions, this is the access point for that consciousness of higher dimensions, higher awareness. And it's about awakening the third eye, and almost every indigenous and religious tradition on the planet knows about it. It's sometimes called the Eye of Horus, the all-seeing eye, as I mentioned before, the third eye, or the eye of God. So when you've got, when you've got that going on, you understand that it's important to keep it clear. Now, believe it or not, the French mathematician and writer and philosopher René Descartes wrote in his book, The Treatise of Man, my view is that this gland is the principal seat of the soul and the place in which all thoughts come from, or all thoughts are formed. Again, if it's polluted, you're not going to get clear messages. You're not going to have a clear way of understanding what's going on out in this crazy world right now, are you? So it's really important to realize that if thine eye be single and clear, thy whole body will be full of light, as the old saying goes from Yeshua back in the New Testament. So what are some of the things that can decalcify the pineal gland? And you get other benefits, side benefits from it, instead of side effects. Bragg's apple cider vinegar. Now, raw unfiltered apple cider vinegar from any manufacturer will do the trick, okay? So it has malic acid in it, which breaks down excessive calcium in the body, and that's what gives it that sour taste. It helps your whole gastrointestinal tract, it helps you burn fat, but it also breaks down calcium deposits within the pineal gland. Another thing is iodine. This is great if you've been drinking sodium fluoridated water, and that's been building up. You can avoid the problem with, if you can't get iodine supplements, then eat more organic foods like kale, broccoli, almonds, oranges, flax seeds, sesame seeds, etc. Also, turmeric, good old turmeric, which uses mostly as a seasoning. I won't repeat what you just messaged me. That's pretty funny. Okay, yeah, no shame, no judgment. We also recommend, according to this one article, recommends iodine, especially if you're deficient in it. Not only that, it helps the thyroid. Now, the old Edgar Cayce readings had a very interesting product called atomic iodine, which is really amazing stuff. I took it for years, and it works. So that is one thing you can get a hold of from the, oh God, I can't remember the name of the store. Just put it in Edgar Cayce, Cayce, Atomidine, Atomidine. Now, some of the other things you can do to support the clearing is here it is. Turmeric, as I mentioned before, turmeric or curcumin is great for a lot of detoxification, but it does work in this case, in this situation. There's a thing called Activator X, which sounds like something out of a sci-fi film, but actually it's one of the main ingredients in that bulletproof coffee stuff, right? It's based on the research of this guy named Price, who did the research on Activator X. What Activator X actually is a combination of the vitamins K1 and K2. Intestinal microflora in animals produce vitamin K2. That's why if you're vegan or vegetarian, you're not getting that. You have to get it through a supplement. You can only find it in organ meats, fermented dairy products like cheese or butter, sauerkraut, and marine oils. Well, you can eat sauerkraut. I'm not a big fan of sauerkraut. So you can get supplements that are, organic in nature for K1 and K2. And K2 deficiency actually causes the calcification of not only the pineal, but the cardiovascular system. So it's important to bone up for other reasons besides the pineal gland on K1, vitamins K1 and K2. Concentrated butter like ghee, good old Indian ghee butter, who knew, is also a great source of K2. There's a Himalayan supplement called Shilajit. All right, it's been out there in the Himalayan mountains for millions of years. It's a resin, and that also can combat the calcification. Fulvic acid is another one, which you can buy, just about anywhere. You can buy any kind of supplements. Fulvic acid or fulvic ionic minerals are available just about anywhere you can think of that has health food products. Hi, Paul. Hi, Audrey. Here's one I never heard of before. The Chinese call it the king of plants. It's called chaga mushrooms. I don't know if I can get any of that anywhere where I'm at, but if you can get it where you are, give it a try. One of the functions of the pineal gland, according to this article about chaga mushrooms, is that the pineal gland uses melanin to help shield you from the damaging effects of ultraviolet light or ultraviolet radiation, which is part of the sun's spectrum. So you can get it in a way that's easy to ingest. It's in the form of a tea. Raw cacao, for all you chocolate freaks out there, raw cacao triggers high levels of nitric oxide, which increases the size of the blood vessels, which helps to detox the pineal gland and supports a healthier functioning of it. So the antioxidants that are in raw cacao are called anandamides. Anandamides are actually the bliss molecule. That's the high you get from eating raw cacao. It's a neurotransmitter produced in the brain, and it's why you feel high or can feel stoned after eating very high quality cacao or chocolate. But hey, that's a fun way to decalcify your pineal gland. It'd be perfect. Tamarind seeds or tamarind extract will also do the trick. And of course, I mentioned before apple cider vinegar. So can't go wrong on any of that stuff. They're all natural. They're all wonderful, good things. Okay, so there you go. So that's pretty much it for the powers of being able to empower yourself to clear your pineal gland. Now there are meditation exercises. There is the hemisync audio materials for synchronizing the hemispheres of the brain that activate the higher centers like the hypothalamus, the pineal, and the pituitary gland. Those come from the Monroe Institute. You can get binaural music that will activate the pineal gland. You can get all kinds of stuff to work with enhancing your metaphysical bodies, and especially through the pineal, the pituitary, and the hypothalamus. Now, the hypothalamus is important to take care of too. I'm not going to go into that here because I'm not a physician, I'm not an endocrinologist or an epidemiologist, so I'm not putting myself out there as such. I'm just reporting the findings from my own research into this. Now, many of you listening probably don't know this, but 26 years ago, I went through a spontaneously triggered Kundalini awakening, and for years on end, it felt like somebody had their thumb on my third eye and on the top of my head. This was the result of the clearing of those channels from the Kundalini awakening, and sometimes I ended up seeing more or knowing more than I cared to, all right? And that is something you have to prepare yourself for if you're going to work with the alchemy of the body and the alchemy of the subtle bodies to access these other parts of yourself that are always aware on some level of these other realities, these other dimensions, and this other information. So again, why is this important, considering all the chaos and craziness going on around us? it will assist you to be able to intuit, teach from within, the truth of anything, to find the truth of anything. And if you're really unsure about it, you can use another intuitive tool to verify what your knowing tells you at any given time. Where we all go off the rails is we start second guessing ourselves, and we start analyzing what we felt or what we heard or what we sensed, and then we rationalize it away until finally it's dead. Well, that's what growing up in this culture taught us to do as children, to grow up and be adult, right? So, stop believing in all that stuff. Don't listen to your feelings. Listen to what we tell you to listen to. Gotta have another hit of coffee. This is organic, so I'm careful with this consumption because it can, with too much, affect the pineal gland. It's important because there is so much disinformation and misinformation, and with Neptune going retrograde at the end of June in Pisces, it's only going to be more difficult to sift out the truth from fiction or fake news, or how should we say it, post-truth, in the months ahead. There's a lot of things going on this month. The next few weeks are going to be pretty heavy. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything, all right? So, we've got two eclipses. We've got Mercury going retrograde. We've got Neptune going retrograde. It's going to be an interesting time, okay? So I can only deal with a few days at a time. So I'm not going to go out and give you a synopsis for the whole month. We'd be here after the afternoon my time. What we are going to say is that right now things are kind of static. Venus and the Sun are going to meet up on Thursday, our time. I think it's going to be Wednesday if you're in the US or in the Far East, but it'll be here. In the UK, it'll be on the 4th. Venus retrograde will meet up the Sun at roughly, I think, 13 degrees. We've got the eclipse coming up in Sagittarius, I think on the 5th. It's not far away. Let me check that. We like to be accurate on these things. Yes, sort of. Hang on a sec. I went one day too far. Okay. Yeah, it's at the mid degrees of Sagittarius Gemini. So we get the Sun at 15 Gemini and the Moon at 15 degrees Sag. Middle degrees are very strong, very, very strong periods of activation. So this will be an interesting one because they are at the same degree points as in 2001 on September 11th, when Saturn was at 15 Gemini and Pluto is at 15 Sagittarius. So we're going to echo from 9/11. And Venus will be close by at 12 degrees Gemini. Nothing much else to report at the moment. But after that, of course, we have, that's an eclipse. And then we get and more on that on Friday when I come back for another coffee break on Friday afternoon. There's also the fact that on the day of the summer solstice, we're going to have the Sun at the next eclipse at 0 degrees Cancer, which is the world axis degree. So there's going to be a major shift, Ola, over the next week or so after that. And I'll put that back in your mind somewhere, and we'll talk about it more on Friday, and certainly a lot more when we get right around the corner from it on, say, the 15th or 18th of June. Right, Mercury retrograde, 18th of June. What can tell you about that? Back up your hard drives, back up your phones. It's just typical celestial trickster kind of stuff, as my friend Armand Diaz, the astrologer in New York, calls them, the celestial gremlin. And so that's pretty much what's going on with the sky right now, or in the sky. The last thing I wanted to mention, and by the way, put your questions in the comments or any topics that you'd like me to cover. Revisiting something here, is that here in the UK, there was a company called Faculty that was associated with the vote leave or Brexit party efforts to get Britain out of the UK, out of the EU, not out of the UK. And now the government has contracted with this artificial intelligence firm for the new coronavirus track and trace contract. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, there's all this glad handing behind the scenes. For those of you who are following all the stuff about America, it's dreadful. This is my homeland. This is my country. That is literally tearing itself apart again. Maybe it's just been in stages, but I haven't lived in the U.S. since 2004, and I've seen everything in my lifetime from, the Kennedy assassinations, Martin Luther King, the riots in Chicago, the Vietnam War, beginning, middle, and end, the Reagan era, and all of that. And this is a critical time over the next 3 years for the United States. And as the United States goes, so goes the world at this stage. Because the United States is going through and in already, very close to being inside its Pluto return, 284-year orbit, or 248, I get the confused sometimes. But it's basically a long cycle orbit, and it's coming back home. All the chickens are coming back home to roost now in the U.S. All the issues around racism, all the issues around empire building, all the issues about just the solar effect of Sun in Cancer for a nation. It's like, listen to Mama, she knows best. Do as I tell you to do. It's for your own good. That kind of smothering love. Bossy mama, if you will. And, America is an incredible experiment, and still is an incredible experiment. But it's having a huge identity crisis right now. And that is going to continue. Don't consider for a moment that this is just sort of the beginning of the end. It's more like the end of a beginning. I don't know where it's going to go. And please do not judge, if possible, any of the participants in this, especially the ones that are being employed or being self-appointed in stirring the pot and stirring trouble and creating situations in which crowds go berserk and start rioting. Enough stories I've heard on the inside from eyewitnesses in Seattle and elsewhere are that the police are baiting and goading the violence through many different tactics. We watched a program, I don't know if any of you watch Netflix, but there's a great guy called Hassan Minhaj, and he has a program called Patriot Act. If you can catch it, go back to the September 2019 episode called Broken Policing and watch that one, and you'll find out why the American police departments are the way they are. It's not just about racism, it's about a culture of violence and protecting their own and blocking or obstructing justice. So America has a lot of skeletons in its closet that it's going to need to deal with. And so does everybody else. UK is no exemption around that. A lot to answer for, I guess, karmically. So all that's coming home to roost. All of that's being, pushed up and out so where we can see it. But you got to keep this clear, or you won't see correctly. You'll judge, or you'll attack, or you'll find that yourself on the side of taking sides with people. You can take a side with an ideology. You can be for the planet. You can be for nature. You can be for defending life. You can be for good health and abundance and sharing and cooperation amongst all people and living in harmony with the environment. You can be for those things. That's making a choice. That's making a decision. But I don't recommend judging looters who have had virtually nothing and now even less than nothing. Those who are sincerely in deep need or in deep poverty, and there's a lot of that in the U.S. Don't let the culture, as it presented through the media, fool you. There's a huge amount of poverty and destitution in the United States, but since 2008 especially. And so if anything rings true still for me, it's the words of a former economic analyst. I don't know if he's still alive even. He had a magazine and a publication called Trends Journal, Gerald Celente. And he once said on a Art Bell radio show, good old Dreamland, back in 2001, when people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, then they lose it. And this is what we're seeing happening now. People only allow themselves to be pushed to the edge so many times. And we're all being pushed to the edge with coronavirus, COVID-19, lockdown. We're all finding out exactly where our pressure points are, personally and collectively. So we have to be careful and clear-minded and clear perceiving and clear intuitive and clairaudient and clairsentient and clairvoyant, to the extent that we do not fall into the trap of us and them. Okay? So that's my message for today. I've covered just about everything I want to cover. Oh, I was going to talk about cryptocurrency, but I'll save that for Friday. I'll save that for Friday's episode. More on AI and cryptocurrency, and on the upcoming transits coming up over the next 2.5, 3 weeks, okay? So in the meantime, take good care of yourselves, look after each other, and the famous words of Bill and Ted, party on and be excellent to each other, and love you and blessings on your journey. Take care.